So at NVIDIA's CES 2025 press conference, we got a shocking look at the new VF project, which is pretty interesting. So we're going to take a look at that video and kind of dissect it a little bit to see what we could look forward to in the next Virtua Fighter. And we also have an interview with Yoshinori, Kitase, and Naoki Hamaguchi on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, including, do they think a movie or TV show could potentially happen for Final Fantasy VII? So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button. And if you're new here and you'd like to stick around and help support the channel, you can subscribe, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Alright, so starting off first with that VF information. If you were watching the CES press conference for NVIDIA like I was, you were taken aback by some very quick footage that they showed off of the new Virtua Fighter. And I'm using air quotes there when I'm talking about that footage that they showed. And VF was here because they do have a partnership, Sega does, with NVIDIA. They're really kind of backing each other in terms of like the technology. And NVIDIA really wanted to showcase what these new graphics cards they have planned can actually do. And it's pretty nuts. The new cards, I believe it's the 5070, has the same performance power as a 4090, but instead of it costing you $1,400, it's going to be like $549, which is nuts. And it makes me really happy that I have not upgraded my computer yet, because now it makes upgrading to a much beefier computer much easier. But getting to that Virtua Fighter footage, just kind of out of nowhere, they pulled out about 10 seconds of VF footage. It was short and sweet, much like Sabrina Carpenter. It flew by, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my gosh, not only is this gorgeous, but it is super smooth and fluid, maybe a little too smooth. So then I rewound the footage, and sure enough, on the bottom of the screen it says that it is pre-development footage, so it's in-engine footage, not actual gameplay. And of course, afterwards they would release an extended look at this trailer, and there was also clarification by one of the game's developers, Richiro Yamada, who would say, yes, this is a pre-development concept video that we crafted before development started on the new VF. And for those of you who don't know what a proof of concept video is, it's essentially, in this situation with Virtua Fighter, the developer saying, this is what we want to do, this is what we think we can do in terms of the look of the game, the overall feel, gameplay, all that great stuff. So while it is proof of concept, there are a lot of things that you can pull from this video that will most likely be in the next Virtua Fighter. And that first one, and this was pointed out by Maximilian Dude, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, this game is 100% going to have a World Tour style campaign. Now, what is a World Tour style campaign? World Tour stems from Street Fighter VI, and in Street Fighter VI, you created your own custom character, you got to venture around the world, train with different Street Fighter characters, learn different moves and abilities. It really taught you how to play Street Fighter, but it also kind of brought you up to speed on the lore of the characters, of the story, and where everyone's at. It's essentially a really well done, beefy story mode. So I definitely agree, Virtua Fighter is going to have that, just kind of based on how the video starts. We see Akira walking in, fighting another Akira, and it just kind of has that kind of presentation to it of like, yeah, this feels very cinematic. And one of the other factors that kind of backs that up is the other interview we covered just a few days ago, where the developers were saying one of the ways they're going to have Virtua Fighter stand out in this sea of fighting games is to focus on the story and the characters. And what better way to do that than to have a World Tour style mode that brings people up to speed with the world of Virtua Fighter in those characters. Whether you're a lapsed fan or you're brand new or you've kept up with the series, it'll be a really cool refresher of what Virtua Fighter actually is. Now, as this gameplay demo gets started, of course, we see both Akiras, and this is another way to tell that this is just in-engine footage, because the two Akiras that we see are not doing typical Akira moves. They're doing completely different types of martial arts. It looks super fast, super smooth, super fluid, so that kind of lets you know, like, okay, these are just like two prototype Akiras that aren't actually going to be what Akira is in the main game. And starting off with the actual combat, the punches, the kicks, the blocks, the parries, it looks and feels super smooth, it's beautiful, and it really does feel like you're watching an action sequence in a martial arts movie. You know, I think The Matrix, I think of anything with Jet Li, Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, it really feels like an actual martial arts fight, especially when it comes to the animations on the blocking and the evasions, which at first look seem like they're scripted, but if you look at the actual footage of Virtua Fighter that we got at the Game Awards, which is most likely the most recent build of the game, you can see elements of that type of, I think it's called dynamic blocking, in that video footage. So the way Akira fights Akira, it's super dynamic, blocking the punches with the forearms, evading the kicks. You're seeing that in that TGA footage of Akira versus not Sarah Bryant. I believe it's Stella who he's fighting. But you see the way that she blocks Akira's attacks, whether she's blocking with her forearms or she's checking with her leg. That dynamic blocking is definitely there. It might not look as smooth just yet or as flashy, but it's definitely there, and they're building upon it, which looks really cool. And then we see some very DOA type stuff where Gray Suit Akira kicks Ryu Akira into some debris. It explodes everywhere at the cheese factory. There was debris everywhere before Ryu Akira gets up, and then they pose off again. So while it is pre-concept footage, this is very much stuff that they probably want to try and integrate into the next VF. And again, looking at that Game Awards footage, you see a lot of that animation style and blocking and parrying in that footage. And if they can somehow make the final product look a lot like that, I think it's going to make Virtua Fighter really stand out. Virtua Fighter is just really fun to play in general. It's one of the reasons I love games like Tekken and Dead or Alive, is because those games, Tekken and DOA, pretty much don't exist without Virtua Fighter. Tekken especially, we've mentioned this before, the face of Tekken, Katsuhiro Harada, has blatantly said on many occasions that they've ripped off Virtua Fighter for many, many years, until Tekken eventually would create its own identity. And then DOA was made off of the Virtua Fighter 2 engine, so you don't have DOA literally without Virtua Fighter, which is why DOA in terms of gameplay has always been so similar to Virtua Fighter. It's just been much more fast-paced, a little bit more looser, I guess would be a best way to describe Dead or Alive, at least in my opinion. So those fast, fluid movements, kicking people into environments and having stage interactions, I think is super cool. And again, it's going to help Virtua Fighter really stand out. And the cool thing is that it's still being faithful to Virtua Fighter as a martial arts fighter, but now it's a little bit flashier, but in a way that's still kind of grounded. At least as grounded as you can get by kicking someone and then having them land 30 feet away and interacting with a part of the stage. So this is sick. I can't wait for them to show off more footage of Virtua Fighter, especially more updated footage, not just like the previs kind of stuff. I can't wait. I can't wait until there's a beta. We'll be covering Virtua Fighter in the future, anything that kind of piques my interest. I just falling back in love with Virtua Fighter, seeing what they're doing, seeing all the support that Sega is giving it. It's just really awesome to see, and I can't help but wait to see what they do in the future. So moving over to that Final Fantasy interview, this comes to us from Gamer Tag Radio, who got to sit down with Naoki, Hamaguchi, and Yoshinori Kitase to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, thank you to the Shinra Archaeology Department on Twitter, who took the time to transcribe the interview and post it on Twitter, so we're going to be pulling from their transcriptions. And the interviewers start off first by asking Yoshinori Kitase and Hamaguchi-san what characters do they feel closest to, and Hamaguchi would respond by saying that Cloud stands out the most to him among all characters in the game, since he's been on the remake project for about 8 or 9 years at this point, and he's always had Cloud there visibly, so he's almost like family to him at this point. And Kitase would go on to say Vincent, and we actually did cover this in a previous interview. Kitase loves horror movie characters, and he wanted to have that type of character in the game, which is how we ended up getting Vincent. But as far as Hamaguchi-san's anecdote goes, I think it's actually really cute. For them to be working on a project like this for so long, it's got to be insane. You spend every waking day with these characters, and Hamaguchi-san in particular, with him being the director, he's got a lot of responsibilities, including probably overseeing the designs of the characters, animations, battle stuff, and he was probably playing different builds of the game every single day to see how things were progressing. Is there any bugs? Are there things that they can improve? And I would kind of like to think that maybe it was a situation where he sat down and was like, okay, Cloud, what are we going to do today in our playthrough? What kind of bugs are we going to find? What have you got for me? So it's almost kind of like, I don't know if parasocial is the right word, but it's like this kind of virtual relationship that Hamaguchi-san has maybe built with Cloud, and he feels that kind of affinity for him of like, we spent a lot of time together, man. So you're very close to me. And that definitely extends past the characters. There's been so many photos and stories of the developers, of Hamaguchi-san in particular, hanging out with the English voice cast, which is honestly really cute and adorable. And a couple of months ago, they did a Reddit AMA. And in one of those questions, someone asked Hamaguchi-san and Kitase what their favorite pizza toppings were. And Hamaguchi couldn't remember the name of the pizza, but he said the pizza that I had in New York when I was with Cody Christian, Brianna White, John Bentley, Max Middleman, and Susie Young. So So it's really cute to see that he actually does, when they have these big press events, he gets to hang out with the cast of the game, at least the English cast, and they just kind of have dinner and talk, and you really do see how close the devs are with their cast, and it just really goes to show you how much everyone involved in this project really does care a lot about these characters in these worlds and really getting it right. And to see them hanging out together, it's super cool. And it's always awesome when Cody Christian gets involved, because that dude is busy. So when he's able to actually take time to attend an event and be at a press meeting or just hang out with the devs, it's super cool and pretty rare. So up next, we talk about the movie/TV side of Final Fantasy, and do they see anything happening in the future? So Kitase does clarify that there are no discussions as of right now in terms of adapting Final Fantasy VII into a new movie or TV show, but he goes on to say he would like to see a movie or a series related to Final Fantasy VII. Kitase says this is his personal wish, but he's seen many Hollywood directors, actors, and creators with a respect for the title, and he's been hearing about creators who are interested in the property. He continues by saying personally he would love to see something that comes out of these creators in terms of a cinematic or visual piece. He would be excited since there are so many creators who respect the Final Fantasy VII universe. However, nothing has been planned officially. Now, for me personally, if they were to do a Final Fantasy VII series or a movie, I would really love for it to be kept in-house at Square Enix. Maybe you form some sort of partnership with Sony Pictures and you create a new movie or a TV show that could be on a streaming service like a Netflix or an Amazon Prime, and it would become a way for them to extend the story of Final Fantasy VII without having to create a brand new game, something sort of in the vein of an Advent Children. And again, to kind of bounce off of what Kitase says, Advent Children and Final Fantasy VII in particular are still very, very influential. Final Fantasy as a brand might not be as strong as it used to be, but people still remember OG FF7 and Advent Children. One of the examples I love to give is, I forget the director's name, but she directed The Marvels, and she said that Advent Children and the action sequences in that film greatly inspired the action sequences in her film. There's also the well-known interview by now of Robert Pattinson saying that he played the original Final Fantasy VII, fell in love with Aerith, and was devastated when she died.
Mine, I think it's a lot of people's favorite game. Final Fantasy VII was, still one of the most, probably one of the only times I've cried in my life is when Aerith dies.
It's a very impactful performance for sure.
Yeah, my first love.
And I have to know now, does Robert Pattinson know about the 7 Remake trilogy? Is he secretly playing that trilogy right now? Is that why the Batman 2 has been delayed? Because Robert Pattinson is making his way through Rebirth and he can't film the Batman 2 until Part 3 comes out. Pat, you gotta let me know, have you played the trilogy? I call him Pat like we're friends. So FF7 Advent Children still very much reverberates around the industry and has really influenced so many creators in terms of animation, voice acting, and just overall movie design. Advent Children was so ahead of its time. So personally, I want Square Enix to do another movie or a TV show. You could even do a movie or TV show kind of retelling the events of Final Fantasy VII for the general public who maybe don't want to play through the games. But I don't want this to be something that leaves and goes to, you know, another studio or another creative group of people that maybe aren't as familiar, because it can be kind of dangerous. On the plus side and on the positive aspect, you might end up with something like Sonic, where the people who create the Sonic movies clearly understand the characters and the lore and the world and the expectations that the fan base has for these types of characters. And the end result are movies that are genuinely really good and super fun to watch and respect the source material. On the flip side of that, you end up with something like Halo, the TV series, which was not good. There were moments watching that TV show where I'm like, oh, this is Halo. Like, this is something I remember from the game. And then the other 95% of the TV show happens and I'm scratching my head going, do these people know what Halo is? Have they ever played the games? Why are they straying so far from the source material to the point where it doesn't even feel like Halo anymore? And that was a really big issue with the Halo TV show, is it felt like someone took a unnamed science fiction TV show script and just decided to slap Halo on it and make it. So it was just a super, super messy project. Didn't really feel like Halo at all. And that's the worry I would have with something like Final Fantasy VII in particular, is that we all have expectations for what this franchise is, what the characters are, the story. And I'd be afraid that, a big studio would come in and not understand the characters or the world and end up creating something that doesn't really resemble its source material. And another reason I would want it to be animated is because the voice actors on the remake project are phenomenal. And I would love to hear what they can do outside of the constraints of being in a VO booth recording dialogue for a video game. A game where they have to match their cadence to the animations of the characters, but also try to match the Japanese line delivery. So as great as these actors are, they are still kind of held back to a degree by those restrictions. So if you could do a movie or a TV show that is a little less restrictive and really allow those actors to really push themselves, I think it could be really great, because voice direction has come such a long way. Animation for characters and the way that they speak have come such a long way. And I remember watching behind the scenes footage of Advent Children, and Steve Burton, who is a good actor and I think has some really great Cloud performances, was really kind of held back. So was someone like George Newbern, who voiced Sephiroth, and both of these guys have talked recently about how they were so excited to play these characters. Steve Burton in particular was like, yeah, like I've been on a soap opera for most of my career where I'm playing a really one-dimensional character, and now I get to actually play a character who has personality and life, and I can bring some excitement to the role. And he was told on multiple occasions, yeah, we need you to dial it back. We need you to be as monotone as possible. We need you to really follow the lip sync of the Japanese version of the performance. And it kind of sucks for people like Steve and George to know that they are talented performers, but they were kind of held back on a lot of those issues, unfortunately. But now that I think about it, if they were to go live action, I could totally see Robert Pattinson as Vincent. He's got the build, he's got the voice, he's got that mysterious aspect to him. Give him a really good wig. I think he could pull it off, and it would be phenomenal. And we will end on final messages from Kitase and Hamaguchi-san on the Rebirth project, and what would they like to say to new and old fans. Kitase starts first by saying, FF7 was created 20 plus years ago, but they've seen fans and media affected by this title. With the 7 Remake project, they brought this classic into the modern gaming format. They're hoping players can experience what people have been talking about over these years. Hamaguchi then says, he's sure there are players who have heard of Final Fantasy VII but not experienced it. They have made Rebirth to match the modern gaming format, so he hopes it's enjoyable for a new generation of players. And I think they've achieved that. Rebirth is such a special game in my opinion. I think it's phenomenal. It's a really incredible foundation and jumping off point, especially for part 3, where they can really refine a lot of those exploration mechanics, gameplay, combat stuff to make, potentially the best entry in the series with the finale. But as a fan of the OG, I feel like they've met my expectations, and to know that the people in charge of these projects genuinely love the game. They are fans themselves, so they know what it takes to bring these characters and these worlds back to life, and what kind of gameplay expectations a lot of us fans have, and making compromises with that combat system of having it be action, but also having that ATB turn-based element there to kind of satisfy both crowds. I personally, again, love the deviations they're taking with the story. It's something fresh and new and incredibly exciting, because I don't know everything that's around the next corner. And it definitely seems like the fans really love this game for the most part. There are some, people who aren't crazy about Rebirth, which is fine. But I'm also noticing a lot of new people. There were people who are saying, yeah, I really wanted to play Rebirth, but I don't have a PS5. So they're now going to get it on PC. And Rebirth is performing really well on the Steam charts. It's constantly in the top 25 on the best sellers list for Steam. So a lot of people are clearly interested in playing the game now and finally getting to check out what so many people were crazy about. But there's also the other end of that spectrum of new people hopping on board and discovering this franchise for the first time and falling in love with it. A creator I like to shout out, and I've mentioned her in previous videos, and that's Kastaclysm. She streams on Twitch, also has Let's Plays on YouTube, and in 2023, her chat really wanted her to try a Final Fantasy game. So on the YouTube side of things, where it's just her, she decided to try Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hello everyone, Future Corduroy here. As I was editing, I just realized that there's a massive spoiler coming up, and I don't expect Kastaclysm to ever watch this video, but if for whatever reason you do come across it, stop watching now, because I just realized I give away a really massive spoiler in regards to part 3 that she is not aware of. So again, I don't think she'll ever see this video, but Kasta, if you do, stop watching right now. Massive spoiler alert, turn off the video. I made a mistake. She didn't know anything about Final Fantasy or 7 going into her playthrough. She didn't know any of the story stuff. She didn't know about Aerith. She doesn't know about Cloud and the twist that happens in that game. And she played it and she immediately fell in love with it. She loved the combat, she loved the characters, she loved the intrigue that was set up by that story. She loved it so much that when Rebirth came out, she played it ASAP. And again, she loved it even more. So now she's a big Final Fantasy fan. So you're constantly seeing new people come across the Final Fantasy franchise, especially 7 since it's a trilogy, and falling in love with it and starting to kind of feel a lot of the feelings that we had when we played the original game when we were younger. And I say all of that to just kind of make the point that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about sales for Final Fantasy, and Remake did really well. Rebirth may have underperformed to some of Square's specifications, but all in all, I think this remake project will end up being a slow burn. And by the time we get to part 3, I think that's when things will really kick off for this franchise, and a lot more people will be like, okay, the entire trilogy is out. I'm going to give this game a shot. You know, I want to see what all the fuss is about. And again, hopefully by that point, the entire trilogy will be available on PC as well as Xbox and, you know, the Switch too. And way more people can now experience this really wonderful trilogy. And hopefully it will lead to a much bigger payoff where a lot more people start to realize, oh yeah, this is genuinely really good. Super special. I kind of wish I would have paid attention to it when Rebirth came out initially. So I bring that stuff up a lot just because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I know a lot of people who watch these videos are also super passionate about it, and we just kind of want to share our passion with the world, let people know like, hey, these games are great, you should give them a shot, I think you'd really love them. So with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the Virtua Fighter footage. What are you personally hoping to see in the next VF in terms of maybe gameplay or story stuff? And what do you guys think about what Hamaguchi-san and Kitase-san had to say about the Rebirth project specifically? Would you like to see them do a movie or some sort of TV show, whether it's live action or animated? And should Robert Pattinson play every single role in live action? Honestly, give me Robert Pattinson as Sephiroth too. Robert Pattinson as Sephiroth, as Tifa, as Aerith, as Cloud. Make him Red 13. Maybe not Barrett, because that would just be really offensive and a massive can of worms. But what do you guys think in the comments down below? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.